internet later on for people to be able to listen to. We with the webinars, we generally only have about this many people presenting or attending, but we do get a number of people will go and look at the readings later on, because in Australia we're sort of covering a pretty wide area and a wide time frame. So in New Zealand, or on their way home from work. So anyway, thank you for coming along. The topic today is orthopaedic education. I guess I'm a little bit biased, just for people who don't know me and for people on listening to this later on. My name's Paul McLeish. I'm a lecturer at the University of Adelaide, and I coordinate the graduate diploma in orthopaedic nursing, which has been running at the university since 1996. Pretty much every year, except for there was a couple of years there that didn't run, and it currently is running every second year at the university in the School of Nursing. And I guess actually I'll introduce Gav first, and then we can then I'll give you some background into why we're having this webinar. So Gavin, do you want to talk about yourself and introduce yourself? I'll just wait to see if he have you come back to us yet? Well, I'll wait for him to come along. Anyway, I guess the reason I'm really wanting to push, not just because that's my role, although that is part of what I want to do, but I see the specialty of orthopaedic nursing really in today's world of different surgical techniques and different requirements, things like there was 80% of the people were in traction, and it was just obvious that you needed to have nurses there who knew what they were doing in that specialist area. And hardly anyone's in traction. People are up and about much quicker than they used to be. They're not resting in bed. Our students had 4 this week. You must sometimes get there's a number of staff in the orthopaedics area that would just not know how to put on Hamilton muscle traction, and which is just so different to what it used to be, I guess. Anyway, having said that, so there's a bit of threat, I guess, to the specialty of orthopaedic nursing as overall because of those changes. The things that made orthopaedic nursing unique back in those days don't exist as much anymore. So I guess there is a little bit of a threat to say, well, we don't really need specialist nurses looking after orthopaedic patients anymore. And I think that's untrue. I think even though some of those specific orthopaedic needs are no longer there, or not there as much to the same extent, I think there's still really significant needs for orthopaedic patients that's not as overt or not as obvious as maybe was in the past. And I think there's a danger that, given that those needs aren't as overt, that there'll be pressure from hospital administrators and managers to say, well, we don't need specialist nurses, let's just make general surgical wards and put our orthopaedic patients in that. I guess I often use the example of a patient with a significant pelvic injury who's lying in bed with traction on, and if you stood back and watched 4 nurses go and turn that patient and say wash their back and provide their hygiene needs. To watch it, it looks pretty straightforward. Like it looks like it's not difficult. That's something that anyone could do. But when you start breaking down how complicated that process is and how many things that are considered, it really is can be really quite complicated. And again, like I said, it's not. So I'm just reading Amanda's note, and Gavin just had to drop out for a sec. Oh, he's back. I'll make him a presenter again. Hang on a sec. So Gav should be able to talk in a sec. So Amanda's saying we had promoting competence in non-orthopedic nurses. Yeah. The other example I use, which I think is along there, a number of years ago when I was working in Ortho, I was called up to a surgical ward and there was a patient with a pelvic injury. And I was talking to one of the senior nurses there and sort of going through what his care needs would be. And I said to her, "Oh, you know, how are you very caring?" She sort of just looked at me and said, "Oh, well, we haven't rolled him, we haven't touched him. You know, they could and couldn't do." And this guy had been on their ward for probably a day and a half, and he'd just been lying flat on his back. And I guess to me that just seemed silly. Like, you know, I guess it was so natural to me that, you know, I would find out how, what sort of injury he had, because, you know, she said he had a fractured pelvis, but, you know, that could be 27 different things. And, you know, to a specialist orthopaedic nurse, I would, you know, be able to find out what the injuries were, know what the implications of that were for rolling or pressure area care, and sort of go and find those things out and then achieve what they can, I guess. So, yes, so I guess that's something that as it becomes more, you know, ingrained with us, we don't really appreciate the complexity of it, and so I think it's worth taking time to think about that. And part of what goes along with that is having nurses who have additional education, qualifications, and also experience in the specifics of ortho nursing as well. So now Gav's back with us. I'll let you introduce yourself, Gav, if you're happy with that.
Yep, sure. Thanks, Paul. I'm Gavin. I'm a nurse education facilitator for orthopaedics and trauma services at Central Adelaide Local Health Network, Royal Adelaide Hospital. If I could get a longer title, I'd probably try, but I'll stick with what we've got at the moment. So currently I'm responsible for strategic education planning and staff development across orthopaedics and trauma, and mine is a clinical education role. So it's really based on, I guess you could call it a vocational type model, where we try and shadow people and develop their orthopaedic skills in the ward setting. It's quite interesting because we do have orthopaedic and trauma, including bone infection and spinal injuries unit. We do have a couple of seemingly strange areas in our service though. So we've got a acute surgical assessment unit there that does take orthopaedic, but also general surgery, and now we'll be taking a few medical patients. And I also look after outpatients department, including women's health, surgical specialties, and pre-operative assessment.
Cool. So and what are you doing in your spare time, Gav?
Basically, I'm trying to take over the world.
Excellent. That sounds good. It's interesting that you talk about that, because that concept of or the occurrence of orthopedic areas, you know, once upon a time they were all very specific, you know, orthopedic wards or areas, and now that's not very often is not the case in acute care hospitals, and I mean that's okay and that's reasonable. But I guess what that does do is it means that there are nurses who are looking after orthopedic patients who don't have a great deal of experience and also do not have additional education in specifics about looking after orthopaedic patients, and that can be a challenge as well. Just want to say hi, Miriana. Thanks for coming along. Miriana is one of our regulars, so thank you. Sorry, Gav, what were we going to say?
Yeah, I was actually going to say something about that point. We've got multi-trauma, particularly pelvic injuries or femoral injuries that go to their area. And it is quite, I don't know that it's amazing, but it is quite interesting to see just how hesitant their staff are with dealing with those patient groups. And even after us extending orthopaedic education to them for around about 18 months, there's still that hesitancy on their side. So I think while it's fine to have orthopaedic patients on their ward, they need, as you were saying, that specialist knowledge available.
Yeah, yeah, and that's sort of something we tend to underestimate because I guess we're a little bit used to it, and we don't fully appreciate how significant that is. And it goes back to what Amanda was talking about before. Is it can really have an effect on our length of stay. There's been research a number of years ago from, I don't think it's Sweden. I'm trying to think which country she comes from. But Ami Hommel is a senior nurse over, maybe it is Sweden. Anyway, she did some research looking at orthopaedic patients cared for in general wards as opposed to orthopaedic specialist wards, and there was differences in the length of stay and also the number of adverse events as well. So that's again, that's a really strong point. So anyway, I guess what we're talking, all this is sort of leading up to the idea of, okay, we need nurses who are looking after ortho patients with lots of orthopaedic experience, lots of orthopaedic skills, but on top of that, they need additional study and education. Now, whether that's through a university, through a postgraduate program, or a hospital-based course, they're both of equal importance. Just that additional focus, I think, is what's needed, and the ability to use what they've learned in practice, apply that to some theory, and then also get theory about some advanced practice ideas, and then apply that to practice as well. I did the grad dip at the University of Adelaide in 1996, and this was one example that really stuck me. Halfway through, a patient had come in with an Achilles tendon rupture, and the intern had been told by the registrar to get a cast put on. And so the intern filled in the form, sent the patient down to outpatients. They came back, and I wasn't looking after the patient, but I knew what was wrong with him, and he was billed out of the ward, and I noticed that his plaster was in 90 degrees. And because I'd just, had some education on that not long before, which I probably wouldn't have thought about otherwise, that I realised that they'd done the plastering correctly. So, there was a chance that he may have been sent home, come back for his first outpatient's appointment 2 weeks later with his plaster at 90 degrees and, maybe needing to go for surgery. So, I was able to pick that up because of my the grad dip training that I was doing at the time, and I think that's a really good example of some of the real actual practical benefits of that sort of thing as well. So what I'll do is I'll go through just a quick outline of my course throughout Australia. Wendy, who runs one over in WA, was hoping to be with us, but she was a late apology. And I was hoping that Robin would also be here. She's from the College of Nursing, and they're running a couple of courses as well, which are relatively new. So there's a few courses going. The other issue is the courses were going have either been cancelled altogether or are only offered sporadically, and that's just purely to do with numbers of students. So, the course that I run is now being offered every 2 years because we have the numbers to make it the environment that we're seeing in universities throughout Australia. That if they're small courses and they're not got lots of students in them, then they'll either get cancelled or they may only get run every now and then. And I think that's a real danger for our specialty as well. So it's not me trying to keep my job because that's probably about a third of what I do. So I've got enough else to keep me busy, but I think that's a real concern. Sorry, Gav, were you going to say something?
And yeah, it's interesting because the other thing that goes with that is that we're not turning over anywhere as many staff. For example, the Royal Adelaide wouldn't be unusual for us to turn over 120 staff in a year, but I know that we're nowhere near that number at the moment. So if we look at a relatively small service like orthopedics, the number of blood, for want of a better term, that are coming through and may be interested in doing a grad dip isn't as great as it used to be. We've got a lot of long serving staff members that have never shown the willingness to undertake further tertiary education, and trying to motivate that group is actually something that we've been thinking about for a while.
Yeah, there is something to do, I think, with a newer generation of not seeing that the benefits of that so much. But I don't think it's just that. I think as they see the specialty is not as unique as it used to be because of various reasons, and I understand that. But I guess it's up to us as senior people in that group to make sure that that we do try and push that and get them to understand, hopefully. So, but it's a good point. So, all right, I'll move on. Otherwise, you get sick of me talking forever. So Miriam is saying costs is a factor, definitely, yeah. So the costs are going up and up, and with the government sort of withdrawing a lot of funding, that can be a real challenge. Some of the courses are not Commonwealth supported, which means they're full fee paying, so that can be sort of for a master's, around $25,000. For a grad dip, which is the course I run, even though you can do it as a master's, it is Commonwealth supported, which means the total cost for the grad dip component is about just a bit under $6,000, which is still not insignificant, but it's not anywhere near the $25,000. But it does make it hard to access that as well. There are a number of opportunities for scholarships. So locally, the College of Nursing offers a number of scholarships. In South Australia, I know there's some of the government ones. Some of the private places have paid for students to study. That's been my experience with some of the private places. Now, whether there's sort of less of a desire to do that in the current financial situation, I'm not sure, and that can always be a bit of a challenge as well. But it definitely is. It can be a cost factor as well. So I'll just outline the course that I run. It's a graduate diploma of nursing science. So you can do the full masters. You need to be able to get into that. You just need to have finished your bachelor, or if you studied. Gav's doing stuff on the screen there.
Sorry, mate.
That's right.
I was live.
That's right. I don't know how you made it go big. Hang on, I'll go back to the.
Just that one there. Yeah, that.
Cool. What was I saying? I forgot now. Yeah, so you just need a bachelor, or if you didn't do a bachelor, once you've been working in the area for 2 years, that's enough anyway. So the grad dip is 1 year full-time or 2 years part-time, and then the master's is another year full-time or 2 years part-time if you want to do that. You can just do the graduate diploma, which is the main clinical courses, and then graduate with that as well. So like I said, the fees, so for stage one, which is the graduate diploma, is around $6,000. You can do it full-time, part-time, three-quarter time. It's mostly online, so we use this sort of system. We do weekly lectures for I'll come back to you in a second, Amanda. That's a good question, though. We do online lectures through this sort of a similar program to this, which with a bit more functionality, and then we have a face-to-face workshop for 2 days each semester, where students come down and to Adelaide, and we do some of the more practical side of things as well. It can be a little bit of work, but if you do it part time, it's not quite so bad. I always try and encourage people to do it with some of their colleagues. So you're walking through things, practical stuff you've got to do on the ward and get a clinical diary signed off, and then there's all the theoretical component. And so pretty much everything you access online. So it just means you don't go anywhere. You can do the classroom like you might be now, wearing pajamas or something like that. There's a link down the saying, so does the Masters lead into a nurse practitioner or PhD? So if you do the full Masters, yep, you can lead into a PhD, but you have to do a research-based Masters, not a coursework Masters. If that's your ultimate, I recommend you do the grad dip component as orthopaedic. There's a set number of courses you do for that, and then for the second stage, which is the Masters proper, you do a research dissertation. But more than happy to chat to anyone about those options, and then that can lead into a PhD eventually. The nurse practitioner is a separate Masters in itself. We don't offer that anymore at the University of Adelaide because we found that so many people were wanting to become a nurse practitioner and would enrol in the course, but they didn't have a candidate position, and their workplace didn't actually end up supporting them, unfortunately. And then they finished their studies but didn't get a position. So we were only accepting people that had nurse candidate positions, but there are a number of universities that still do that, so that is an option as well. Has anyone got any other questions about the course that I run? No, looks pretty straightforward. All right, so just when my dogs are being annoying. Gav, do you want to talk about the courses that you offer at the hospital?
Sure. So at the Royal Adelaide for around about the last 15 years, I think it's a little bit longer than that, we've been offering a 3-day Concepts of Orthopaedic Nursing course. So that course has still currently run in face-to-face mode. It's open to all of SA nursing staff, but obviously we have to charge an amount for non-SA health staff, and that's about $300, which really is nothing for a 3-day course, I assume. Currently, what we look at in the program is the first day is based around a review of anatomy and physiology of the musculoskeletal system, and then we go into a bit of musculoskeletal assessment. We do assume that people have some prior knowledge from their undergrad courses there, so a bit of it's revision, and there's lots of hands-on, particularly in the assessment part there. Then we start looking at generalist orthopedics and trauma areas like fracture management, a bit of wound management. We look at complications of orthopedic injuries as well. We do have a bit of a focus on a few of the more common types of trauma that we see, so pelvic injury, neck of femur fractures. There's quite a good, I would say about 1/6 of the program is dedicated towards spinal anatomy and physiology and care of the patient following a spinal cord injury or elective spinal surgery. We've also got some advanced nurse positions that come in and speak. So our joint replacement CPC does a session on her role and takes us for a journey following the patient from pre-operative workup right through admission to discharge. And we've also got our orthopaedic nurse practitioner, Anita Taylor, who speaks about fractured neck of femur fractures and fragility fractures in general, and what work she does with ortho-geriatricians to speed their movement through the hospital, and also to optimise their pre-op and post-operative care. And most people find that very interesting because even staff that have been on the ward for a reasonable amount of time, 18 months, couple of years, don't have that full grasp of what Anita does in the background there. We do have some allied health staff talk on orthotics devices. Physios come in and take us through some mobility regimes, how to set up devices and ensure that people are using them correctly. We do a bit of an introductory session into plaster casting and removal there. What else do we do? Traction management, and do a practical session on traction setup as well. So currently the programs run twice a year, and we have anywhere from 12 to around about 20 people in the program. Often a few from private hospitals as well as country health, which makes it quite interesting when we listen to how other people deal with orthopaedic trauma as well. As far as the assessment for this course, because it doesn't actually provide any certificate or credit to a tertiary course, it is simply run as I suppose you could say, a taster for a graduate diploma in orthopaedic nursing, and to provide those staff that are hesitant about further study to get a taste of what it may be like as well. The assessment component, is based in a workbook at the moment, which is the bane of my existence. Takes about 6 hours to make a workbook. So we're looking at moving all of that into a flexible learning where they'll be able to do a lot of online theory, quizzes and information review. And then we're going to look at running the 3 days as simulation or case scenario based, and have the clinical experts in to actually guide those scenarios and respond to questions and take people through the practical skills as well. That's approximately where it sits at the moment. I've had a few about having credit assigned to this course, but obviously, as with most things, it takes quite a while to work out all the minutiae behind changing to that sort of model.
Yeah, it's a good idea though, because what I think it does is it then into the tertiary study, and people feel like, oh, well, if I've already done this area and put some time and effort into this, then I can get some credit or status for the university course as well, which is good, I think.
Particularly when they're getting all of this for free.
Yes.
So they're fully supported, fully paid for it, and it's almost. It's interesting to see the people that have been working for 2, sometimes 3 years, and come to this course and realise that they still have quite a large gap in their knowledge. And I do encourage them then to think about, well, this is only a 3-day course. Consider what you might be able to learn if you did your grad dip. So
yeah, and And I think that's the thing with the study, either mode. It's about saying there is real value in expertise, experience, time in the area, and practical skills. But just to polish that right off onto the top, is about getting exposed to the theory and elements. It's more about, okay, what do you do as your practice in your ward? I hear people say, oh, we do this, but that's okay. But what does the literature say? What is something changed in terms of the best practice for that sort of injury or disease type, and getting exposed to that and talking about that on a deeper level is really useful. So Miriam has written, sounds like a good course. Yeah, so that sort of course is, like I said, that's just as valuable as the university courses, and there should be more of those, and we should be trying to get people into those from a broad range of areas. So the rural guys who see a lot of trauma, and they often work in the emergency departments there, as well as the wards and maybe theatres and stuff like that. To the people that are working in the private setting as well, that's really important, and a whole range of public areas as well. So trying to get people into those courses and get those courses running is really important as well. So, all right, I think that's probably about it. I'm just going to say Manning is a coordinator. She runs a couple of ortho courses at the College of Nursing, and they're pretty much all online from my understanding. So if you're interested, you can look up the acn.edu.au, that's the Australian College of Nursing, and they've got some information. There are a couple of courses over in Western Australia as well that do run online as well, and Wendy runs those, but you can, if you've got any questions, there is a page on the ANZONA website that's got all the current running, and they've got links to those coordinators as well as some information packs as well. So Amanda's saying, I would like to sell that idea, and do you have a document about it, Gavin? Yep, that would be great. So Gav, can you type in your email address for Amanda?
Sure. Yep.
Is that all right?
I'll do that.
Yeah.
And we've got all the documentation. Unfortunately, at the moment, things are in a little bit of a hiatus. For those of you that may have been somehow disengaged from reality for a while, you might be aware that we've got the New Royal Adelaide and EPAS coming our way. It's putting quite a considerable burden on our education budget and rostering for the remainder of this year and into next year. So we will be delaying our next course until the second half of 2016 at this stage.
But definitely worth keeping an eye out for it and making, yeah, so that sounds good. So Gav, can you put
send information to anyone? Yep.
Yeah. So if you put that in the text thing, that'd be great. Thank you. And yeah, and for any people in other states or New Zealand, it's definitely worth. I don't know what else is out there, but definitely have a look around and talk to your local chapter to find out if there are any of those sorts of courses as well, because that's really good value. So.
There is a one-day course at Queen Elizabeth Hospital that I know of. That's quite heavily based towards elective surgery now, given the changes that will be happening at the QE due to transforming health. So, yeah, they're going towards the elective surgery and minor trauma now.
Yeah, no, that's good. And it needs to be, these sort of courses need to fit. We can't just do what we always did, because the world's different now, and orthopedics is different, and orthopedic nursing is different. So, as long as we're responding to what really are the needs, that's important as well. So, all right, so that's probably long enough listening to us rave on. Has anyone got any questions before we finish up? St. Vincent's 3-day course last year. Ortho Jerry's, yeah, that's a good concept as well. There are some, the Australian College of Nursing, one of their courses is about rehab as well. No, sorry, am I telling lies? I better not say anything because I don't really 100% sure. But yeah, it is good to have a few different things, maybe rehab or Ortho Jerry's, or maybe the ACN one is. Oh, Sharina, sorry, I didn't see when you came along. Welcome, Sharina. Oh, you're late. That's all right. Just finishing up. Sorry. Musculoskeletal. Yeah, because there was. So, Marana, you're talking about the ACN one because they did start off with one that was different, and they've created this new one. So I think yeah, that's the second one there. That's good. Yeah, we're just about to finish. Yep. Okay, that's cool. Any other questions or comments, guys? No, excellent. Oh, well, thank you for coming along. I appreciate it. It's good to get a few people here. The other thing too is what I say to people is, be the ones that have for these sorts of programs, and when you're talking to your colleagues, say, why don't you go and do it in the hospital? Just that, that stuff's important and it's worth doing, and promote that as well, I guess. So. Thank you all. Everyone keep in mind the ANZONA conference in November, later this year in Sydney. You can look up information on the ANZONA website, which I'll type in now. Sorry, coughing in your ear. So that's the website. Go and look up at information about the conference, and encourage your colleagues to go to that as well. Okay, I think we'll finish up there if everyone's happy. Thank you all. And thanks, Gav, for coming along. Oh, yes, early bird finishes 31st of July. Get in before that and save yourself lots of money. And it's always a good, fun social event, and you learn lots as well. And great to network with other. The Melbourne one I think we had 350 people, I think, from memory, so it was decent size, and it was really good. So. Okay, thank you all, and stay tuned for the next webinar. We'll update that on the Facebook page, so if you haven't joined the Facebook page, you can do that and get updates of what's happening with ANZONA, as well as also the details of the webinar. You can also go back to the ANZONA page, and you can, once this recording's up, we'll put it up online, and you can access that online as well as all the other previous presentations as well are there. So thank you all.